This is the first video for SLO 3. We're covering section 2.1 from the book, where we look at graphs for qualitative data. The next section we'll look at histograms. So far, we've studied the different ways to collect our data and how not to collect our data. Now we're going to spend some time learning different ways to illustrate our data graphically. So we'll examine several different graphs. You may have heard of all of them before, or not. Either way, it's fine. I'm assuming you haven't heard of any of them. But before we get to graphs, we're going to start with something even more basic, like a table or a chart. So for example, if you look at example 1 over here, consider this data, right? This is 20 responses to a survey question about the reason for visiting a local library. Take a look at that data for a sec. How could we condense this data as a table or a chart? I might use either word interchangeably. Not yet a graph, right? Pause the video. See if you can make a table or a chart of this. So one thing you could do is you can make something called a frequency table, where you have, on the one hand, on the leftmost column, you have the category. The middle column, we're going to have a tally. And then the rightmost column, we're going to have the actual frequency. Right, so if we just kind of do this, very, very basic, but very effective chart. Right? So over here, we're just going to say, okay, what are the different categories? In no particular order. I guess I see study first. I'll just put that there first. Meet someone, I guess, comes in second, just because that's what I see second. And then last is check. Make it capitalized, right? Whatever. Check out books. Right? So we've got that. Maybe move that down a little bit more, just for spacing. All right, now studying. I guess I'm going to tally every time I see studying. I see it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Meeting someone, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, I guess I see only 5. I lied. No, only 5. And then if there are 20, I guess I would expect to see 7 for checkout books. And sure enough, I see it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, whoop, no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. All right, so that's our tally. And then, of course, for the frequency, we just put the actual number of times, right? I know tally might seem a little excessive, but trust me, it's good if you need to hand draw a frequency table. Okay. So the book calls this a frequency distribution. Right? I think the table is the visual representation of a frequency distribution, but they just call it a frequency distribution, so that's what we're going to call it. Right? This is a table or a chart, whatever you want to call it, with the following characteristics, right? As we saw before, not frequency, category is in the leftmost column, tally in the middle, and frequency in the rightmost column. A relative frequency distribution it's the same thing, except it's relative instead of just raw, which means that we replace tally with frequency. So we sort of get rid of the tally and shift frequency over, and we replace frequency that was normally on the right with relative frequency. So if we draw a relative frequency distribution, right, remember, this is what we had before. So this is what we're going to have. We're still going to have category on the left, but then instead of tally, we're going to have frequency. And then on the right, we're going to have relative frequency. Okay. So sure enough, the categories are going to be the same. Study, meet someone, and then check out books. But what's going to be different? Well, we know the frequency for studying was 8, and then meet 7 was 5, and then check out books was 7. Then the relative frequency, all we're going to do is divide by the total number of data points. Well, how many data points were there? 20. So we're just going to take each of these numbers and divide them by 20. Right? So 8 twentieths, 5 twentieths, 7 twentieths, right? And yes, of course, you could also write this as 2/5. Yes, of course, you could write this as 1/4. And no, of course, you can't reduce 7 twentieths, right? Just to let you know, on a quiz, I don't care about whether you reduce your fractions or not, unless the question says specifically to do so or not to do so. So next up, we're going to look at bar graphs. Now, I'm guessing you've heard of bar graphs before. I know I had before I taught this course. These are graphical representation of frequency distributions, I should say. And just to be clear, they're graphical representations of frequency distributions. There's an S at the end of that. I can't write it, but frequency distributions. For qualitative data. Want to emphasize that. When it's quantitative, then we're talking about histograms, and that's in the next section. Remember, we're looking only at graphs for qualitative data. All right. So a bar graph for the above data, it's really just the visual representation of the frequency distribution. All right, that's all it is. So I'll zoom out a little bit so you can just see the original frequency distribution, right? So, sure enough, we've got the x-axis and the y-axis. You don't need to label them as x and y. I just do that because I'm used to, doing this in other classes like college algebra or calculus. So anyway, we put the categories in the x-axis. Maybe I'm running out of room here, so one thing you can do is write meet and then put the someone below. And then here, check out books. Squeeze that in there, okay? Maybe I'll just make these red to pop, and maybe I'll kind of try to do this. Oh, actually, before I do that, I should also just point out that we're talking, maybe we come up with some kind of a scale. This is, of course, the frequency. So we've got studying, we know, has a frequency of 8, so we just kind of draw it up to here or so. Not being super precise, but, right, see what I'm doing there, right? Meeting someone goes up only to 5, right? And in theory, these all should be the same width. Again, doing my best here. Right, that's maybe a little thinner than it should have been. Try that one more time, right? Make it a little thicker. Right, whatever. All right, draw it all the way down just to be clear. Right, and then check out books. That goes almost as high, but not quite. And then across. And then down. So something like that. Again, pretend that they're all the same thickness. Let me try that one more time. Make that a little thicker. Maybe I'll try one more time. Maybe that's too thick, right? Whatever. Okay, so there you go, right? That's an example of a bar graph. Okay, so note the following attributes of this bar graph, right? 1, the x-axis had categories, or I should say consisted of categories. Or I should maybe just say consists of categories. Right, that's qualitative data. Right. Number 2, y-axis consists of frequencies, right, for each category. And then the other two concern the bars. Maybe I'll put them in red. Whatever, I'll just put them in blue. The bars are relatively sized. Right? The bigger one, like the bars representing higher frequencies are higher. The ones representing lower frequencies are lower. Right? But they are proportional to each other, right? And then last but not least, the bars do not touch. If you're saying, no, I've seen a bar graph where actually the bars did touch. No, you saw a histogram. A histogram is a kind of bar-ish graph where they touch, right? Again, we'll do that in another section. All right, so shifting gears a little bit, we'll talk about a Pareto chart, which is a bar graph whose categories are ordered from highest to lowest frequency, just to be clear. Yeah, squeeze that in here. So how are they useful? Well, they're useful because a lot of times you're interested in what the most popular category is, right? What if you care most about, what's the most common reason people go to the library? Oh, it's to study. Great. You'll see it first. So I guess we'll just say often we care most about the highest frequency category, which is easily observable in a Pareto chart. All right. So a Pareto chart of the above data. I'm going to be nice and lazy and just copy my original bar graph. I just need to reduce its size a little bit just to give myself a ton of space here. Let's put it right there. All right, and then the only thing I'm going to do here, actually I'll get that ready. Guess I ought to switch these categories, right? All right, studying is already number 1. But check out books and meet someone are kind of the opposite. So I do that, and then let's see if I can get away with this. Can I? Oh, not quite. Move this guy. Move this guy. All right, maybe space that a little bit better. Right, something like that, okay? There's your Pareto chart, right? So the same exact information as a bar graph, but just ordered nicely, okay? And this is often nice and convenient. There's also something called here, let me zoom back in a little bit, horizontal bar graph. And this is kind of niche. You see this every now and then. The main times you see this this is I think what the book was saying, is when the category names are too long. like to fit nicely on an x-axis like this. So it's better just to kind of stack them vertically, right? So just make the x-axis vertical, y-axis horizontal, etc. All right, so you kind of reflect this graph about that line effectively, sort of what you, or maybe you could think of it as, actually, I guess you don't even do that. You just sort of rotate it, I guess you could say. All right. So you expand it to the right instead of up. So, for example, we could write this as studying, you could say, meet someone and check out books, right? So I'm going to do this based on our original bar graph, right? Not the Pareto chart, but you could totally do it for the Pareto chart if you wanted. Right, so you've got this. Maybe move that up a little bit. Actually, before I do that, let's make some markers again. 5 and 10. And then we'll, just draw chart right there. So, yeah, oh, and I think that was good. I guess the axis wasn't super straight, but, So anyway, we got that, and then that, and then that, right? Something like that, right? So, again, same information, just horizontal, right? And again, this right here, I forgot to write this down, but this is just the frequency. Okay. And then last but not least, there is such a thing called a side-by-side bar graph. You've probably seen this, even if you're not familiar with the term. It's just when you got multiple bar graphs on the same set of axes. So, for example, I'll start this off. I'll let you finish it, because I think you'll get the gist pretty quickly. Is if you look at this Kardashian, keeping up with the Kardashians data, you've got each Kardashian, each female Kardashian, right? They've got their Twitter followers and then Instagram followers, and millions, right? So I guess we'll have the frequency. Looks like we'll have, I guess maybe we'll say about this. We'll say this is 25. This is 50. 75. I'm just basing this off of the data. 100. And then I guess if we kind of extend this a little bit, I guess we have to. Right here we have 100. 125. 100. Right, something like that. All right, so that should be good. And then here we'll have, just writing out the categories, which of course is people. Kim, Kendall, Kylie, Chloe, and Courtney. Right. All right, so we've got this, and then, for example, if I did their Twitter followers, right, Kim has 60.5 million Twitter followers. That's a lot. Oh, maybe I'll use a straight thing to clear about that. All right, so we got that. Kendall's got 27.7. Right. Kylie, same sort of thing. Right. Chloe, same sort of thing. Again, pretend these are all perfectly equally spaced and perfectly equally wide. And then Courtney's got just a hair less. Right? But now what we do is we say, okay, what about Instagram followers? So let's make that pop with black, right? So 127, right? So we've got, right, that. Oh, not quite what we wanted. Okay, so we have that with Kendall. also very high. About there. And I'll just let you finish it at this point. By the way, it's turning these into rectangles, but you can just, you know, at the bottom. Actually, screw it. At this point, we may as well just finish it. Right, you get the picture, right? We do this. 86.9 is about here. Again, I'm kind of rough edging this here. And then last but not least, 73 something right about here. So, right. So this is an example of a side-by-side bar graph. And then last but not least, pie charts. I'm sure you've heard of pie charts before. Ideal for illustrating the proportions of each category, right? Maybe I'll just do it like this, right? So actually, well, I'll just do the library one. I think it's pretty simple, right? So you've got something like this. You had one library, right? 2/5 of the data, 1/4 of the data, and then almost 2/5 of the data. So I'll do this as best I can. 2/5 of the data, 40% is like, well, this or so. That's to study. And then maybe this is like, that's about 1/5 or so. Meet someone. And then the rest is check out books. That's all for this video. Stick around for part 2.